Deep in the forests of old Russia, people whispered about a woman who could fly in a mortar, control storms, and eat those who crossed her path. Her name alone made fires crackle and children hide. Yet behind the tales of terror lies something older, something that once made people worship her instead of fear her. Baba Yaga is an old woman who lives deep in the Russian forest. She has iron teeth that can gnaw through bone. Her nose scrapes the ceiling of her hut. Her skin is wrinkled like ancient bark. You go to her because you're desperate or foolish. The first written mentions appeared in 17th century Russian folktale collections. In villages bordering the great forests, people believed speaking her name could summon her attention. Her home stands on chicken legs, giant ones, scaly and yellow, with clawed feet that grip the earth. The hut spins constantly until someone speaks the right words. Little hut, turn your back to the forest and your front to me. Around the fence, stakes rise from the ground. On each stake sits a skull. At night, fire burns in the eye sockets. When Baba Yaga travels, she climbs into a giant mortar and uses the pestle as a steering oar. She flies through the air, dragging a broom behind her, sweeping away her tracks. She ate people, or that's what the story said. Children who wandered too deep might never return. Her favorite threat was simple: I'll grind your bones to make my bread. Yet she didn't eat everyone. Sometimes she helped. Heroes often had to seek her out because she possessed something they desperately needed: fire, wisdom, a magic feather. She tested them. If they were rude, lazy, or dishonest, she ate them. If they were brave, clever, and respectful, she might help them. She's a gatekeeper who guards the threshold between the ordinary world and the magical one. To get what you need, you must prove you deserve it. Her appearance and dwelling matter deeply. The iron teeth weren't random details. In Slavic folklore, iron represented protection against evil spirits. The chicken leg hut echoes ancient burial practices where the dead were placed in structures raised on posts above ground. These burial huts sat at the village edge, marking the boundary between the living community and the forest beyond. Baba Yaga's spinning hut occupies that same liminal space. She functions as judge and examiner. Nearly every story includes a test. In Vasilisa the Beautiful, a young girl is sent to fetch fire. Her stepfamily hopes she'll be eaten. Instead, Vasilisa succeeds by being polite, completing every chore perfectly and never asking too many questions. Baba Yaga gives her the fire. When Vasilisa brings it home, the fire burns her stepfamily to ash, but leaves her unharmed. This judicial function was crucial in a subsistence culture where one mistake could mean starvation. These weren't just moral lessons, they were survival instructions. Her connection to death and transformation defines her essence. Baba Yaga exists in liminal space, forest and village, life and death. When characters go to her, they're at a turning point. Her oven mirrors the cremation fire. To be placed in it is to die, but fire also purifies. Consider a child in a medieval Russian village. Your grandmother tells you about Baba Yaga. The story keeps you close to home. It teaches caution. But it does something else. It tells you the forest has a guardian, someone who enforces natural law. When Christianity arrived in 988, it didn't just add new beliefs. It worked to erase the pagan past. Baba Yaga, who may have once been revered as a powerful divine figure, was recast as a servant of the devil. She survived though. They preached against her. They rewrote the stories to make her purely evil. But people kept telling her tales. She remained vivid because she served a purpose Christianity couldn't fully replace. By the 17th century, Baba Yaga had been through centuries of transformation. She was no longer clearly a goddess. She was a witch, a monster. But traces of her older nature remained in the details. Understanding Baba Yaga means understanding how a culture processes change. She's not just a scary story. She's a fossil of ancient beliefs, worn down by centuries, but still recognizable. She refused to disappear because people needed her. They needed a figure who represented the forest's power. They needed someone who would punish the arrogant and reward the humble. The question that changes everything is who she was before she became the villain of children's stories. Baba Yaga's name holds clues to a past that predates Christianity by thousands of years. Names carry history. Baba means grandmother or old woman in Slavic languages. Yaga is where things get complex. It doesn't have a clear translation, but connects to concepts of horror, pain, illness, or fury. Some link it to an old Slavic word for snake. The ambiguity suggests the word is ancient. In ancient religious contexts, fear and reverence were often the same emotion. A goddess associated with death or disease would naturally inspire horror, but that didn't make her evil. It made her necessary. The theory that Baba Yaga evolved from an older goddess rests on patterns repeated across Indo-European cultures. When you compare gods and goddesses across Greek, Roman, Celtic, Germanic, Slavic, Hindu cultures, you find striking similarities. In Greek mythology, Hecate serves as goddess of witchcraft, crossroads, and necromancy. She appears as an old woman, often with 3 faces. She helps those who seek her correctly, but destroys those who disrespect her power. She exists at thresholds. Hecate and Baba Yaga share too many traits for coincidence. In Hindu tradition, Kali appears with a terrifying form. Wearing a garland of skulls, she destroys demons and represents necessary destruction that precedes enlightenment. She's also a mother goddess, fiercely protective. She embodies the truth that creation and destruction are inseparable. Among the Slavs, Mokosh was a goddess associated with earth, fertility, weaving, and protection of women. When the church came, her shrines were torn down. Some believe aspects of her worship merged with the Virgin Mary. Other aspects may have attached to Baba Yaga. She functions as a death goddess. In early Slavic belief, death was a transition. The dead became ancestors who could help or harm the living. Someone had to oversee that transition. Baba Yaga lives at that boundary. Her forest is the place between the village and the other world. In ancient funerary practices, the dead were cremated and ashes placed in clay urns. Food was buried with them. There were feasts held in the presence of the dead. This was communion. Baba Yaga's cannibalism might echo these practices. Her oven is central. It's a cremation fire. To enter the oven is to die, to be transformed by fire. She connects to nature and seasonal cycles. Pre-Christian Slavic religion was tied to agricultural cycles. Goddesses associated with these transitions were crucial. Baba Yaga, living deep in the forest, represents the wild aspect of nature. The forest gave mushrooms, berries, game, timber, medicine. But it could also kill you. Baba Yaga embodies that dual nature. She can give you what you need to survive, but approach her wrong and she'll consume you. Harvest rituals involved offerings. People would bake loaves shaped like animals or human figures and leave them at forest boundaries. She carries shamanic aspects. Shamanism was widespread in northern Eurasia. Shamans were intermediaries between human and spirit worlds. They used specific tools: drums, staffs, implements for grinding herbs. The mortar and pestle were used to grind herbs and mushrooms for healing or for inducing altered states. The flying represents spiritual flight, out-of-body journeys. The broom was used for purification, to cleanse sacred spaces. Her iron teeth suggest she's permanently protected against evil spirits. As Christianity spread, the church couldn't tolerate shamanic figures. They competed with priests for spiritual authority, so these figures were demonized. But the memory lingered. It got pushed into folklore. It attached itself to Baba Yaga. She's a composite, the death goddess who oversaw transitions, the nature spirit who controlled forest bounty, the shaman who journeyed between worlds, all compressed into one figure. The church tried to destroy her by making her monstrous, but they couldn't fully erase her because she was too embedded in how people understood their world. Understanding Baba Yaga as a forgotten goddess changes how we read her stories. She's not arbitrarily cruel. She's enforcing ancient laws about respect and courage. She's testing according to old standards that measure worthiness. She's what happens when you try to kill a goddess, but can't quite finish the job. She goes underground, into the forest, into the stories people tell when authorities aren't listening. Next, we'll explore how the church specifically demonized her and what methods they used. When a new faith takes over, it rewrites old beliefs, turning yesterday's gods into today's demons. The year 988 marks the official Christianization of Kievan Rus. The decision meant that an entire religious system had to be dismantled. The church developed strategies. The gentle approach involved syncretism, blending Christian figures with pagan ones. Saints took on attributes of old gods. Christian holidays coincided with pagan festivals. Churches were built on sites of sacred groves. But syncretism only works for certain figures. For the dark goddesses associated with death and disease, the approach was different. You demonize them completely. Linguistic corruption changes words to carry negative connotations. Before Christianization, terms for spirits were neutral or positive. After, those same terms became synonyms for demons. Female supernatural figures who had been protectors were relabeled as witches and servants of the devil. Baba Yaga was explicitly connected to Satan's work. The iron teeth became evidence of her demonic nature. Church authorities pointed to her flying as proof she had made a pact with the devil. The word Yaga became further darkened. Some texts linked it directly to plague and pestilence. Others emphasized serpent connections, playing on associations of snakes with Satan. Symbolic inversion takes sacred pagan symbols and reframes them as evil. The forest, which had been sacred space, became in Christian teaching a place of danger and sin. Going into the forest for spiritual purposes became trafficking with hell. Baba Yaga's hut on chicken legs got reinterpreted as evidence of her unnatural demonic state. Christian doctrine held that proper burial was in consecrated ground, lying flat. A spinning hut raised above earth perverted these expectations. Her flying in the mortar echoed the church's evolving concept of witchcraft. By the late medieval period, church authorities were developing theories about how witches operated. Baba Yaga fit this template perfectly. Even her cannibalism was reframed. In pagan context, ritual eating in the presence of the dead was communion. The church couldn't allow this because it competed with the Eucharist. So consumption of human flesh became the ultimate sin. Narrative restructuring rewrites the actual stories. Early tales were probably more ambiguous. She was powerful and dangerous, but also necessary. As Christianity became dominant, she became purely villainous in some tellings. In Christian versions, heroes often succeed by invoking God or making the sign of the cross. These elements were added onto older story structures. The message became, Christian faith protects you from pagan evil, But complete restructuring requires total control over storytelling, and they never achieved that. Folk tales were told by grandmothers to grandchildren, beyond church supervision. So while official versions could be Christianized, the oral tradition continued with pagan elements intact. This created a split. Educated people encountered Baba Yaga through edited written texts. Peasants encountered her through oral stories that preserved older themes. In the Domostroi, a 16th century text of household rules, warnings appear against consulting wise women. The descriptions fit Baba Yaga. Old women in the forest who claim to know healing secrets, who operate outside church authority. This condemnation had real consequences. Women who practiced traditional healing became suspect. The Baba Yaga archetype became a template for identifying witches. The witch trials were less severe in Russia than in Western Europe, but they still happened. Many victims were older women who fit the Baba Yaga profile. Beyond persecution, there was cultural loss. When you demonize an aspect of spirituality, people stop engaging with what it represented. Baba Yaga embodied difficult truths. Death is natural, fear is instructive, nature is powerful. Baba Yaga is explicitly female, an old woman. In pagan systems, such women often held high status. They could accumulate knowledge over decades. They became advisors, healers, ritual leaders. Christianity introduced a different model. Female authority was suspect. The ideal woman was young, virginal, and submissive. Old women who claimed authority were inversions of this ideal. Baba Yaga represented everything the church wanted women not to be. She lived alone, independent of male authority. She wielded power without permission. Demonizing her sent a message. Don't be like this. The transformation served multiple functions for the church. It eliminated a rival spiritual authority. It provided a template for identifying witches. It discouraged pagan practices. It reinforced gender norms. But she couldn't disappear completely because she was too embedded in the folk imagination. Instead of vanishing, she went underground, became ambiguous, split into multiple versions. Understanding this historical process shows how power operates through stories. The church understood that if they could turn Baba Yaga from goddess to monster, they could turn paganism itself into something people feared. But they learned the limits of narrative control. You can't reach into every home, every night, every moment when a grandmother whispers to a child, and as long as those spaces exist, resistance survives. Now we'll look at the actual tales where she appears, examining how she functions and what her cannibal threats really mean. To understand what Baba Yaga actually does in stories, you need to read the tales. They reveal that her cannibalism isn't random violence, but specific moral instruction. The most famous tale is Vasilisa the Beautiful. A young girl lives with her cruel stepmother and stepsisters. Before dying, Vasilisa's mother gave her a small doll and instructions to feed it when in need. One day, the stepmother deliberately lets the fire go out. Fire was precious. Letting it die meant someone had to make a dangerous journey. The stepmother sends Vasilisa to fetch fire from Baba Yaga, hoping she'll be eaten. Vasilisa walks into the forest until she reaches a clearing lit by skull lanterns. The hut spins before her. She speaks the correct words and it stops. Inside, Baba Yaga demands to know who dares enter. Vasilisa explains politely. Baba Yaga agrees to provide fire, but only if Vasilisa works for her first. The tasks are genuinely impossible. Separate millions of poppy seeds from grains of dirt. Sort moldy grain from good grain. Wash all of Baba Yaga's clothes. Clean the entire hut. Do this while Baba Yaga is away and have it done by nightfall. Vasilisa, through the doll's magic and her own diligence, completes everything. When Baba Yaga returns and finds the work done, she's impressed. She asks how Vasilisa accomplished this. Vasilisa answers, "With my mother's blessing." Baba Yaga reacts dramatically. She shouts that blessed people cannot stay and orders Vasilisa to leave immediately. But she keeps her word. She gives Vasilisa fire inside a skull lantern. When Vasilisa brings it home, the fire burns her stepfamily to ash, but leaves her unharmed. Vasilisa's journey is a classic initiation story. She's leaving childhood safety, entering dangerous adult territory, facing tests that determine her character. Baba Yaga is the harsh teacher who demands excellence. Notice that Baba Yaga doesn't actually eat Vasilisa. The cannibalism is a test of courage. Can you face death and still complete your work? These were essential life skills in a subsistence culture. The impossible tasks teach specific lessons. Sorting seeds requires patience and attention to detail. These were actual skills peasant women needed. The question about how she accomplished the work tests. Truthfulness. Vasilisa credits her mother's blessing, acknowledging help and respecting the past. In The Frog Princess, a prince's wife is an enchanted princess forced to flee. His quest leads him to Baba Yaga's hut. He arrives properly, speaks correctly, shows respect. She chooses to assist because he's approached her correctly. She gives him advice and magical objects. Here, Baba Yaga functions as wise counselor. She possesses knowledge the hero desperately needs, but she only shares with those who demonstrate proper behavior. In The Firebird, the hero must pass through Baba Yaga's territory. She catches him, threatens punishment, then offers a deal. Complete a task and she'll let him pass. The task involves feeding her wild horses. He succeeds. The horse becomes his companion. Baba Yaga kept her word even though she hoped he'd fail. This pattern repeats. Baba Yaga offers deals and she honors them. Her word is binding. She's the gatekeeper, controlling access to what heroes need. Fire, wisdom, magical objects. These exist beyond ordinary reach. Baba Yaga guards the threshold. She determines who gets to pass by testing worthiness. In actual communities, knowledge wasn't freely shared. Certain skills were taught only to those deemed ready. An elder woman would observe younger ones, testing their character. Only after proving themselves would they be taught important secrets. She's the examiner, testing moral character through fear and challenges. Her threats aren't meant to be easy. They're designed to reveal who people really are when everything is on the line. These tests have psychological depth. Why are you here? What do you really want? Are you willing to work for it? Can you face death and continue? The heroes who pass emerge transformed. Her cannibalism is crucial. The threat of being eaten represents real possibility of failure. If the stakes weren't genuine, the test wouldn't mean anything. She's the judge, dispensing justice according to ancient codes. She punishes arrogance, rudeness, laziness, dishonesty. She rewards humility, politeness, hard work, truth-telling. The code is consistent. In one tale, a lazy, rude girl gets eaten. In another, a similar girl completes tasks sloppily and leaves with no reward. A third girl works hard and gets magical gifts. Same situation, different character, different outcome. This judicial function connects to goddess roots. Divine figures in pagan systems dispense justice. They punished violations and rewarded proper behavior. Consider a young person in a medieval village. Life was hard. One mistake could kill you. How do you teach children to take life seriously? You tell them stories about Baba Yaga. Children remember her iron teeth. They remember that she eats the lazy and helps the diligent. When a child hears that Vasilisa had to sort seeds or be eaten, they're learning that attention to detail matters. When they hear that the rude girl got devoured, they're learning that manners are survival skills. The impossible tasks teach. You'll face situations that seem beyond your ability. Do them anyway. Find help, work harder, but get them done. Baba Yaga's binary outcomes reflect subsistence living reality. Either you gathered enough food or you starve. Either you prepare properly or you freeze. The tales don't soften this. They prepare children by showing them in story form what they'll face in life. She says she'll grind your bones to make bread. Bread was the staff of life. Grinding grain was essential work. By framing her threat in terms of bread making, she's connecting death to life, consumption to sustenance. Your body becomes nourished and transformed. It's the cycle of nature. Baba Yaga appears in Russian fairy tales as a complex figure who threatens cannibalism, but whose behavior follows consistent moral logic. She controls access to necessary items and wisdom. She tests character through fear. She dispenses justice according to codes valuing courage, humility, hard work, and respect. Understanding her role means seeing past surface horror to underlying wisdom. She's frightening by design because the lessons are serious. She threatens consumption because the consequences of failure in real life were severe. The tales weren't meant to traumatize children. They were meant to prepare them, to code essential information into memorable stories. We'll now explore the even older practices that Baba Yaga's cannibalism echoes, the actual rituals involving the dead. Ancient funeral practices weren't always about savagery. In early Slavic societies, eating in the presence of the dead was a sacred act of communion. The early Slavs practiced cremation as their primary burial method. They would burn the body, then collect the ashes into clay urns. These urns were buried, but not alone. Archaeologists have found food remains, animal bones, and whole meals buried alongside the urns. This was intentional provision for the afterlife journey. Before burial, there was a feast. The wake feast was crucial. Family and community gathered and ate together. They consumed specific foods: bread, porridge, honey, sometimes meat and alcohol. By eating in the presence of the dead, the living were maintaining connection even as separation approached. The dead were believed to participate spiritually. Portions were set aside for them, left on the grave or burned with offerings. The spirit needed sustenance for its journey. In some traditions, the food symbolized the dead. Bread was baked into shapes representing body parts, hands, feet, even whole human figures. These effigy breads were used in funeral rituals and then consumed by the living. By eating bread shaped like the deceased, participants were symbolically incorporating the person's essence. This sounds horrifying to modern sensibilities, and it certainly horrified Christian missionaries. But within the original context, it made perfect sense. Your ancestors weren't gone when they died. They became part of the land, part of the family's spiritual foundation. Consuming their symbolic form was an act of love. Provision for the dead gives them what they need for the afterlife journey. Death was seen as a transition. The person was traveling to another realm, and like any traveler, they needed supplies. The Slavs buried actual food with ashes, grain, nuts, dried fruit. They included cooking vessels and eating utensils. This provision continued beyond initial burial. At certain times of year, families would return to graves and leave fresh offerings. Harvest time was important. The winter solstice was another key moment. The offerings were also protective. Ancestors could help or harm descendants depending on how they were treated. A well-fed, properly honored ancestor might bless your crops. A neglected ancestor might cause illness or bad luck. Communal eating in the presence of death breaks bread together across the boundary. The wake feast served multiple purposes. For the living, it was a chance to gather, grieve, support each other. But there was an additional dimension. The belief that the dead person was actually present, participating spiritually. Specific seats were sometimes left empty for the deceased. Portions of food were placed at these seats. Toasts were drunk, with some liquid poured onto the ground or into the fire. The living spoke to the dead directly, telling them they were remembered. The communal aspect was about reaffirming the living community's bonds. Death disrupted the social fabric. The feast brought everyone together to acknowledge that disruption and begin weaving the fabric back together. Symbolic consumption of the essence represents the most direct form of incorporation. The effigy breads weren't just memorial objects. They were believed to contain something of the deceased's spiritual essence. By consuming them, the living were taking that essence into themselves. This wasn't cannibalism in the sense of eating actual human flesh. It was symbolic, sacramental consumption. The bread represented the body. The parallel to Christian communion isn't coincidental. Christianity adapted existing ritual structures. In Slavic practice, certain family members might eat these breads to take on the deceased's role or responsibilities. A son eating bread shaped like his father's hand might be accepting the father's authority and skills. Some evidence suggests that in very ancient times, actual consumption of small amounts of cremated remains mixed with food occurred in certain cultures. By the time we have clear historical records, this had been replaced by symbolic breads. Baba Yaga's cauldron or oven isn't just a cooking device. It's a cremation vessel. When she threatens to put someone in it, she's threatening to transform them through fire. This mirrors funeral rites. The body went into fire and emerged as ash and essence. Her threat to grind bones to make bread directly echoes the effigy bread practices. She's saying she'll take your physical remains and transform them into sustenance. In the ancient worldview, this wasn't pure destruction. It was transformation and incorporation into a larger cycle. The forest context is also significant. Burials and cremations often occurred at forest edges or in sacred groves. The forest was the boundary space between the living world and the spirit world. Baba Yaga, living deep in the forest, positions her exactly where death rites would occur. Her role as both threat and helper makes sense in this context. Death is both terrifying and necessary. It takes loved ones, but also clears the way for new life. A figure who embodies death must be both terrifying and beneficial. Consider a specific scenario. A Slavic community member dies. The family cremates the body in a sacred grove at the forest edge. They collect the ashes and bones. Before burial, they hold a wake feast. They bake bread shaped like the deceased. They eat together, setting aside portions for the spirit. They consume the effigy bread. They bury the urn with food offerings. Months later, a child hears a Baba Yaga story. She lives in the forest where cremations happen. She has an oven like the cremation fire. She threatens to grind bones like the ritual grinding of grain. She consumes the dead like the communal consumption of symbolic bread. The child doesn't consciously connect these elements, but subconsciously, the story reinforces cultural knowledge about death rituals. When Christianity arrived and condemned these practices, the rituals were forced underground or abandoned. But the cultural memory persisted in the stories. Baba Yaga's cannibalism preserved the knowledge of what their ancestors had done. The church's horror was genuine from their perspective. Eating in the presence of corpses, consuming symbolic body bread, making ongoing food offerings, all competed with Christian teachings. Christianity taught that the dead were gone, awaiting resurrection. They didn't need food offerings. But Slavic peasants didn't easily abandon practices that had connected them to ancestors for generations. They continued wake feasts. They continued food offerings at graves. They continued telling Baba Yaga stories. Archaeological evidence supports this resistance. Grave goods, including food, continued to appear centuries after official Christianization. Written church documents repeatedly condemn practices like leaving food at graves. The fact that these condemnations were repeated for centuries indicates the practices persisted. Baba Yaga serves as a repository of forbidden knowledge about death rituals. Her stories keep alive concepts the church wanted erased. That death is a transition requiring proper rites. That the dead maintain connection with the living. That consumption and transformation are linked. Early Slavs practiced cremation and buried ashes with food offerings. Wake feasts involved eating in the presence of the dead. Bread shaped like body parts was consumed to symbolically incorporate the deceased's essence. Baba Yaga's cannibalism echoes these rituals. Her oven mirrors cremation fires. Her threats to grind bones reflect effigy bread practices. Her forest dwelling marks where death rites occurred. Understanding Baba Yaga's cannibalism as connected to sacred funeral practices transforms her from random monster to religious figure. She's enacting the ancient rites of death and transformation. She's the priestess of the threshold, the guardian of the mysteries. Next, we'll explore the forest itself and why it was so central to Slavic spirituality. The Russian taiga shaped Baba Yaga as much as any religious belief. To understand her, you need to understand the forest. The Russian taiga covers over 45% of the country. It's one of the largest forest ecosystems on Earth. Dense coniferous trees create a canopy so thick that little sunlight reaches the ground. For the Slavic peoples at its edges, the forest was everything. It provided food, mushrooms, berries, nuts, game. It provided materials, timber, bark, resin. It provided fuel. Without the forest, communities couldn't exist. But the forest was also dangerous. You could get lost. Wolves and bears hunted there. Weather could turn deadly. This duality created a specific spiritual relationship. The forest wasn't just scenery. It was alive, inhabited, conscious. It had rules that needed respecting. It had spirits that needed appeasing. The forest as provider requires proper respect and reciprocity. When you entered to gather mushrooms or hunt, you weren't just taking. You were interacting with a living entity that could give or withhold. Successful foragers made small offerings before entering. Bread left at the forest edge. A few drops of drink poured on the ground. These reflected genuine belief that the forest had agency. Take too much, and it might withhold future bounty. Disrespect its spaces, and it might lead you astray. Specific forest spirits embodied different aspects. The Leshy was the forest guardian. He protected animals and trees. Respectful humans could encounter him safely. Disrespectful ones might be led in circles until they died. Baba Yaga occupies a similar role, but more extreme. She's not just protecting the forest. She's testing those who enter to determine if they deserve what they seek. The forest as boundary space connects the human and spirit worlds. In Slavic cosmology, reality had layers. The human world of villages was one layer. The spirit world of gods and supernatural beings was another. These layers intersected at certain places. The forest was the primary intersection point. When you entered the forest, especially moving deeper from the edges, you were physically moving toward the spirit world. The farther you went, the thinner the boundary became. Deep in the forest, normal rules didn't fully apply. Baba Yaga's hut, being deep in the forest, makes perfect sense. She doesn't live at the village edge where the boundary is thick. She lives in the deep interior where the boundary is thin. Her hut itself is a threshold device. It spins, showing both the human-facing side and the spirit-facing side. The chicken legs elevate the hut above the ground, marking it as not fully anchored in the physical world. Stilted structures in Slavic tradition often had ritual significance. Burial huts were raised on posts. Grain storage buildings were elevated. Both involve transition. The forest as teacher provides hard lessons about survival and humility. The forest didn't coddle. It was indifferent to human comfort. You either learned its patterns and respected its dangers, or you suffered. Forest-wise people knew which mushrooms were safe, which plants healed, how to track animals, how to navigate without trails. This knowledge came through experience, often painful experience. You learned not to eat certain mushrooms because someone did and died. The forest taught through consequences. Baba Yaga functions as the personification of the forest teaching method. She doesn't explain or cushion. She presents challenges and judges results. Succeed, and you gain something valuable. Fail, and you die. The specific details of her dwelling reinforce these connections. The fence of stakes with skulls represents boundaries marked with warnings. The skull lanterns provide light, but also serve as constant reminders of death. The spinning motion creates disorientation, like the forest itself, where everything looks the same. Inside the hut, the space is described as containing everything needed for life, but in distorted proportions. This reflects the experience of being in a deep forest, where scale becomes difficult to judge. Consider how children were educated about forest dangers. You couldn't explain every hazard explicitly, but you could tell them about Baba Yaga. She lives in the forest. She eats children who wander too far. This single story encoded multiple survival messages. The story also encoded social rules. Baba Yaga rewards politeness and punishes rudeness. In a forest community where cooperation was essential, social cohesion mattered. A child who learned to be polite to a frightening forest witch would be polite to elders in the village. Seasonal changes affected how the forest was perceived. In spring and summer, the forest was generous. Stories told during these seasons might emphasize her helper role. In fall and winter, the forest became harsh. Stories told during these seasons emphasized her dangerous aspects. This seasonal variation taught children that the forest, and by extension Baba Yaga, wasn't simply good or evil. She was both depending on circumstances. The chicken leg hut deserves deeper examination. Why chicken legs specifically? Chickens were common domestic animals, but they were also liminal creatures, comfortable on Earth but capable of brief flight. They existed between realms in a small way. Additionally, chicken legs are thin and seem inadequate to support a structure. The hut shouldn't be stable, but it is. This impossibility marks it as magical. Some scholars connect the chicken legs to ancient cremation structures. These stilted houses for the dead weren't on chicken legs specifically, but they were elevated on wooden posts. Over generations, the posts might have transformed into chicken legs. The forest floor itself had significance. Traditional belief held that spirits and the dead remained close to earth. The ground was where ancestors were buried. Elevating Baba Yaga's hut positioned her between earth and sky, between the realm of the dead below and the realm of the living above. When the hut spins and finally stops facing the visitor, there's a moment of alignment. The boundary opens. This mirrors the understanding that certain times and places allowed easier access to the spirit world. The forest around the hut is described as particularly dense and dark, sometimes with trees that move or speak. This living forest reflects animistic beliefs where trees had spirits. Baba Yaga's ability to command the forest marks her as its master or representative. The Russian taiga shaped Slavic life fundamentally. It provided essential resources but posed constant dangers. It served as the boundary space between human and spirit worlds. Baba Yaga embodies all these aspects. Her forest dwelling sits at the intersection of worlds. Her demands mirror the forest's requirements. Her tests reflect the forest's role as harsh teacher. Understanding the forest's centrality reveals why Baba Yaga couldn't exist anywhere else. She is the forest personified, containing its generosity and cruelty, its mysteries and its harsh wisdom. Moving forward, we'll examine her specific tools and what they reveal about her shamanic origins. Baba Yaga's implements, mortar, pestle, broom, and iron teeth, aren't random witch accessories. They're shamanic equipment. Let's start with the mortar and pestle. In the tales, she climbs into a giant mortar, uses the pestle to steer, and flies through the air. This seems absurd until you understand what these tools actually were. These weren't just cooking tools. They were essential implements for preparing medicines and psychoactive substances. Shamans and wise women used mortars and pestles to grind herbs, roots, and mushrooms for healing remedies and for inducing altered states of consciousness. Some mushrooms found in the taiga contain psychoactive compounds that produce visions, out-of-body sensations, and feelings of flight. Shamanic traditions across Siberia document the use of such substances to facilitate spirit journeys. Baba Yaga flying in her mortar represents this spiritual flight, not literal physical travel. She's in a trance state, her consciousness journeying while her body remains. The mortar that prepared the vision-inducing substance becomes the vehicle of the journey itself. The pestle serves multiple purposes. Physically, it grinds the substances. Symbolically, it represents the penetrating force that breaks down barriers between worlds. As a steering mechanism in the tales, it guides the journey. The broom completes the set in fascinating ways. In the tales, Baba Yaga uses her broom to sweep away her tracks. This seems like practical stealth, but it has deeper meaning. Brooms in shamanic and folk magic traditions serve as purification tools. They sweep away negative energy, cleanse sacred spaces, create boundaries that spirits cannot cross. When a shaman enters an altered state for spirit work, they need protection. The journey involves risks. Preparation includes creating a protected space, cleansing the area of interfering energies. The broom serves this function. Baba Yaga sweeping behind herself is maintaining the boundary between the normal world she's leaving and the spirit realm she's entering. Traditional Russian bathhouses used brooms made from birch or oak branches to sweep the body during bathing. This was both physical cleaning and spiritual purification. Baba Yaga's broom operates on similar principles at a larger scale. The iron teeth are perhaps the most revealing detail. Iron held special significance in Slavic folk belief. It was believed to repel evil spirits, protect against supernatural harm, and grant power over the spirit world. Shamans across Siberian and Central Asian traditions wore iron ornaments and carried iron tools. Smiths, who worked with iron and fire, were often considered to have shamanic power, the ability to transform raw ore into useful metal through fire, mirrored the shaman's ability to transform spiritual raw material. Baba Yaga, having iron teeth means this protective power is built into her very body. Her teeth mark her as powerful enough to chew through supernatural barriers, to defend herself in the dangerous work of traversing between worlds. Teeth specifically connect to consumption and transformation. Digestion begins with teeth grinding food. Baba Yaga's iron teeth grinding bones represents the first stage of spiritual transformation. Tools for preparation and transformation change substances and consciousness. The mortar and pestle physically transform herbs and mushrooms from raw materials into useful medicines or vision-inducing preparations. This physical transformation parallels the consciousness transformation they facilitate. In shamanic practice, preparation is crucial. You prepare the space, the body, the mind. You prepare the substances carefully. The grinding itself becomes meditation, focusing attention, building energy. Baba Yaga using these tools signals that she's engaged in serious spiritual work. The transformation aspect connects to her role in stories. She transforms heroes through her tests. She provides transformed or transformative objects. She is an agent of transformation because her tools are literally tools of transformation. Tools for protection and boundary maintenance keep the practitioner safe. The broom sweeping away tracks protects the shaman's path between worlds. The iron teeth defend against spiritual attack. Together, these create a protective framework. Shamanic journey is inherently risky. You're leaving the safety of ordinary consciousness and entering realms inhabited by powerful, often dangerous entities. Protection is essential for survival. Baba Yaga's protective tools aren't just for her defense. They also protect those she judges worthy. When she gives a hero magical objects or knowledge, these often include protective elements. The boundary aspect is also crucial. Shamans maintain boundaries between worlds. If these boundaries dissolve completely, chaos results. Baba Yaga maintaining boundaries through her broom and her gatekeeping role serves cosmic function. Tools for journeying and navigation enable travel between worlds. The mortar as vehicle, the pestle as steering mechanism. These facilitate the shamanic journey from one realm to another. They provide not just transportation, but direction and control. In traditional shamanic accounts, the spirit journey requires skill. You need to know where you're going, how to get there, how to return. The shaman uses various techniques for navigation. Baba Yaga's mastery of these tools indicates mastery of the journey itself. She can travel to any realm, navigate any challenge, find any location in the spirit world. This is why heroes seek her out for information about defeating supernatural enemies. Her flying specifically represents the out-of-body experience common in shamanic traditions worldwide. Practitioners describe sensations of leaving the body, flying or floating, traveling to distant locations. Baba Yaga flying in her mortar encodes this shamanic experience into folklore. When Baba Yaga appears, she often arrives dramatically, flying in from elsewhere. This sudden appearance mirrors how shamans described returning from spirit journeys. Suddenly, back in the body, back in ordinary consciousness, with new knowledge or power. Her knowledge of events happening far away or in secret connects to shamanic abilities to see remotely, to gain information through spirit contacts. In stories, she often knows who the hero is, why they've come. This omniscience reflects belief in shamanic powers of divination. Her tests involving sorting things, seeds from dirt, good grain from bad, mirror the shamanic work of discernment. Shamans had to distinguish helpful spirits from harmful ones, truth from deception. This discernment was life or death important. The iron teeth appear when Baba Yaga threatens to eat someone, but notice she rarely actually does it to heroes who become protagonists. The teeth are displayed as warning, as test of courage. Her isolation in the deep forest reflects the solitary nature of advanced shamanic practice. While community healing involved groups, the deepest shamanic work occurred alone. Baba Yaga, living alone in the forest, mirrors this solitary practitioner model. The age factor connects too. Shamanic power often increased with age and experience. Young shamans had basic skills. Old shamans had decades of practice, had survived countless dangerous journeys, had accumulated vast knowledge. Baba Yaga being ancient marks her as having this depth of experience. Some scholars draw direct connections between Baba Yaga and actual Siberian shamanic traditions. The similarities are striking. Both use similar tools, both journey between worlds, both deal with death and spirits, both live at the edges of communities. Archaeological evidence supports shamanic presence in ancient Slavic cultures. Graves containing what appeared to be shamanic equipment, drums, carved staffs, collections of unusual stones, psychoactive plant remains have been found. When Christianity arrived and suppressed these practices, the knowledge didn't disappear entirely. It went underground, preserved in folklore. Baba Yaga became a vessel for this suppressed shamanic knowledge. Baba Yaga's mortar and pestle were used to prepare medicines and vision-inducing substances. Her flying represents shamanic spirit journey. The pestle guides the journey through spirit realms. Her broom serves purification and protection functions. Her iron teeth mark her as protected against spiritual attack and capable of transforming spiritual essence. These tools together indicate shamanic practice, preparation, protection, journey, and transformation. Understanding Baba Yaga's tools as shamanic equipment transforms her from fairy tale witch into a cultural memory of real spiritual practitioners. The stories preserve knowledge about ancient practices. Next, we'll examine the human dimension behind the monster, how Baba Yaga reflects real social roles. Strip away the supernatural elements, and Baba Yaga represents something deeply human. The elder woman who holds power through knowledge, who tests rather than coddles. In traditional Slavic communities, old women occupied specific social roles that Baba Yaga directly reflects. Postmenopausal women freed from childbearing could accumulate specialized knowledge over decades. They became healers, midwives, keepers of rituals, advisors. Their age was an asset. These roles gave them power, but it was complex power that came with ambivalence. People needed their knowledge, especially during births, illnesses, and deaths. But they also feared that knowledge. Poisons that could kill, curses that could harm, secrets about death. This ambivalence appears perfectly in Baba Yaga. She can help or destroy. She possesses crucial knowledge but might not share it. She's necessary but dangerous. She serves as examiner of character and moral judge. In the stories, Baba Yaga consistently evaluates those who come to her. She asks questions. She observes behavior. Based on these observations, she decides your fate. This mirrors the actual role of community elders. They observed, evaluated, and judged. Their assessments determine social status, marriage prospects, access to knowledge. A favorable judgment from a respected elder opened doors. The evaluation wasn't arbitrary. It was based on observable behavior and adherence to community values. Could you be trusted? Would you work hard? Did you respect traditions? These practical assessments determined who received advanced knowledge. Baba Yaga's tests evaluate the same qualities. Hard work. Will you complete difficult tasks? Courage. Will you function despite fear? Honesty. Will you tell truth? Respect. Will you honor those who came before you? Her binary outcomes reflect the high stakes of traditional life. There was no room for marginal performance. You either developed the character necessary for survival, or you became a burden or danger to the community. She embodies the crone archetype, the third face of feminine power. In many mythological systems, feminine divinity is divided into three aspects: maiden, mother, and crone. Each represents a life stage and associated powers. The crone isn't just an old woman. She's the keeper of deep knowledge, the one who has seen everything, survived everything. She's post-reproductive, but not powerless. Her power shifts from biological creation to wisdom transmission. Baba Yaga fits the crone archetype perfectly. She's explicitly old. She's not anyone's mother in the stories. She doesn't nurture in the soft sense, but she possesses vast knowledge. She understands transformation. She facilitates the hero's journey from immature to mature. The crone aspect includes a comfortable relationship with death. She's not afraid of it because she's close to it herself. This explains Baba Yaga's comfort with death imagery, her threats to kill, her role at the boundary between life and death. Western culture often demeans the crone, viewing old women as useless and powerless, but in cultures that honored the full cycle, the crone was powerful precisely because of her age. Baba Yaga preserves this older view. She's not diminished by age. She's enhanced by it. She reflects the reality of harsh female elders who taught through difficulty. Not all grandmothers are soft and gentle. Some are hard, demanding, critical. They don't coddle. This isn't cruelty. It's preparation for a difficult world. In traditional societies where survival was never guaranteed, gentle parenting could be a luxury. Children needed to be tough, competent, able to work hard under pressure. Harsh teaching methods prepared them for harsh realities. Baba Yaga represents this harsh teaching tradition. She doesn't encourage or comfort. She demands and threatens. But those who survive her teachings gain crucial skills. They develop resilience. Her addressing visitors as child despite their fear emphasizes this teaching relationship. She's not their enemy. She's their teacher. The fact that the lesson might kill them doesn't change the relationship's fundamental nature. Consider her first encounter with heroes. She often asks, "Do you come of your own will or by compulsion?" This question probes motivation. Are you here because you genuinely seek knowledge and transformation, or because external circumstances forced you? The answer matters. This reflects real wisdom teaching. The student who genuinely wants to learn, who takes responsibility for their journey, this student can be taught. The resentful student who was forced, this student is unteachable. Her domestic setting matters too. She has a home, does cooking and cleaning, owns possessions. She's not a completely otherworldly being. She maintains a household, which grounds her in female domestic reality. This combination, domestic and supernatural, creates fascinating tension. It suggests that extraordinary power can exist within ordinary contexts, that the woman doing seemingly mundane tasks might possess profound knowledge. This was particularly important for women in traditional societies, where their power was often domestic and thus undervalued. The oral transmission of her stories primarily by women to children is significant. Grandmothers told these tales. Mothers repeated them. They were preserved in female tradition. The tellers could see themselves in Baba Yaga. For children hearing these stories, Baba Yaga modeled what powerful old women could be. She wasn't weak or passive. She was demanding and dangerous, possessing real power. This expanded children's understanding of female possibility. The stories also taught children how to interact with powerful women. Be polite, work hard, show respect. These were practical skills for dealing with community elders. Her transformation from antagonist to helper in many tales reflects the process of understanding elders. Initially, authority figures seem purely threatening to children. But as children mature, they come to understand that strict elders often have their best interests at heart. The feminist reclamation of Baba Yaga in modern times isn't random. She represents female power that doesn't apologize, that doesn't seek male approval, that exists independently. In a culture that still struggles with powerful women, Baba Yaga stands as an alternative. Baba Yaga reflects real social roles of elder women, healers, midwives, knowledge keepers, moral judges. She embodies the crone archetype, wisdom, transformation, and comfortable relationship with death. She represents harsh female elders who taught through difficulty. Her domestic setting grounds supernatural power in recognizable female contexts. Her stories taught practical skills for interacting with elders. Understanding Baba Yaga's human dimension reveals why she persists across centuries. She's not just fantasy. She distilled human truth about aging, wisdom, and power. She honors elder women by showing their power. She teaches children by challenging them. We'll now explore how Baba Yaga survived through changing political systems and why she couldn't be fully controlled. Baba Yaga survived the Christianization that destroyed most pagan deities. She survived centuries of suppression. She survived Soviet atheism. Her persistence reveals something about cultural memory. After Christianization officially replaced Slavic paganism, religious authorities worked to eliminate pagan figures. They demonized Baba Yaga, rewrote her stories. For several centuries, official culture rejected her, while folk culture kept her alive through oral tradition. By the 19th century, something shifted. Russia experienced a surge of interest in collecting folk traditions. Alexander Afanasyev published his massive collection of Russian folk tales between 1855 and 1863, including numerous Baba Yaga stories. This collection work served multiple purposes. Intellectuals sought to establish Russian national identity by documenting native traditions. Baba Yaga became part of this national heritage project, but collection had an unintended consequence. By writing the stories down, scholars fixed them in place. Oral tradition is fluid. Written tradition is static. This froze certain versions while allowing others to continue evolving. It created multiple Baba Yagas. The literary version studied by scholars, the oral version still told in villages. The late 19th and early 20th centuries saw Baba Yaga entering high culture. Composers like Mussorgsky included her in musical works. Painters depicted her. She moved from peasant folklore into educated artistic circles. Then came the Soviet Revolution in 1917, bringing atheism as official state policy. The Soviets rejected religion and superstition equally. How would Baba Yaga fare under this new system? Surprisingly, she thrived. The Soviets couldn't eliminate her without rejecting Russian cultural heritage entirely. Instead, they adapted her. She appeared in Soviet children's books, but transformed. The threatening aspects were softened. She became more comic than frightening. Soviet films featured her as comic relief. Her image appeared on children's toys, stamps, and decorative objects. She was domesticated, made safe. This seemed like cultural victory for Soviet ideology, taking a pagan goddess and reducing her to a cartoon character. But something interesting happened. Even in these sanitized versions, Baba Yaga retained traces of her original power. Children still recognized her as special, different from other characters. Dissidents and artists sometimes used Baba Yaga symbolically. She became a stand-in for the Soviet state itself. Powerful, frightening, testing those who came to her, capable of destroying or helping depending on whim. The Soviet period also saw serious scholarship on folklore. Vladimir Prop's structural analysis of fairy tales, published in 1928, included extensive discussion of her role. This academic validation preserved her significance even as popular culture diminished it. cultural necessity made her elimination impossible. The Soviets promoted Russian nationalism alongside internationalist communism. They wanted to maintain Russian cultural pride. Folktales were part of cultural heritage. Eliminating Baba Yaga would mean eliminating a recognized symbol of Russian tradition. Instead of elimination, the strategy was transformation and control. Approved versions were published and promoted. This created official and unofficial streams of tradition running parallel. The necessity mechanism also operated at the personal level. Parents and grandparents wanted to pass traditions to children. Telling Baba Yaga stories connected generations, maintained family culture. The act of telling these stories became quiet resistance. Adaptive flexibility allowed multiple interpretations. Baba Yaga's inherent complexity meant she could be read different ways depending on audience and context. For children, she was an entertaining character. For scholars, she was a subject of academic study. For artists, she was a symbol rich with meaning. This flexibility meant different groups could use her for different purposes without direct conflict. The state could promote sanitized versions while people privately maintained traditional ones. She existed in multiple registers simultaneously. Her flexibility also allowed her to comment on contemporary situations without being obviously political. A story about a powerful figure who tests people and destroys those who fail could be about ancient goddesses or about Soviet bureaucracy. Deep cultural embedding made eradication require destroying too much. Baba Yaga wasn't isolated. She was woven into Russian language, art, literature, and cultural consciousness. Idioms referenced her. Sayings invoked her. Removing her would require rewriting vast amounts of cultural material. The cost would be enormous. So she stayed, embedded too deeply to easily extract. This embedding also meant each generation encountered her through multiple channels. Even if schools taught sanitized versions, grandparents told traditional ones. Cultural memory ran deeper than official policy. After the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Baba Yaga experienced another transformation. The new Russia, seeking to reconnect with pre-Soviet traditions, embraced folk culture more openly. Artists and writers could explore her pagan origins, her darker aspects, her complex power without needing to soften or explain. Neo-pagan movements in Russia reclaimed her as a goddess figure. Feminist interpretations highlighted her as a powerful female archetype. Psychologists analyzed her as representing necessary shadow aspects of the psyche. She also went global. Translation of Russian folklore into other languages spread her internationally. She appeared in fantasy literature, video games, and films far beyond Russia. John Wick films reference her. The Witcher video game series includes Baba Yaga-inspired characters. This globalization brought new interpretations. Western feminists saw her as representing powerful crone wisdom. Ecologists viewed her as embodying nature's power and the need for humans to respect natural limits. Psychologists read her as the shadow self, the difficult truths we must confront for growth. Official systems, religious, political, academic, try to control narratives. But folklore operates outside these systems or alongside them, in spaces authorities can't fully monitor. A grandmother telling a story to a child in a village home is beyond state reach. Oral tradition flows through these intimate channels, preserving what official culture rejects. Baba Yaga survived because she lived in these spaces. Writing her down both helped and hindered her survival. It helped by creating permanent records. It hindered by fixing her in place. But the combination worked. Written versions preserved core elements. Oral versions continued evolving. Her persistence also reveals what people need from stories. They need complexity, not simplification. They need figures who challenge, not just comfort. They need connections to deep past. Baba Yaga provided these things. The modern global spread shows that her themes are universal, even if her specific form is Slavic. Every culture has elder wisdom figures. Every culture grapples with death, transformation, the need to test courage. Baba Yaga expresses these universals through Slavic specifics. Her appearances in modern media often maintain essential elements even while changing surface details. She's old, powerful, tests those who seek her, lives at boundaries, possesses crucial knowledge. These core patterns persist because they're what make her Baba Yaga. Some modern interpretations lose the depth, reducing her to simply a scary witch or comic elderly woman. But the best modern works recognize and preserve her complexity. Baba Yaga survived Christianization by going underground in oral tradition. She survived Soviet atheism by being both sanitized for official culture and preserved in traditional forms through family transmission. She survived through cultural necessity, adaptive flexibility, and deep embedding. After the Soviet collapse, she re-emerged in less constrained forms and spread globally. Understanding her persistence teaches important lessons about cultural memory and resistance. Stories and symbols that meet deep human needs survive despite official opposition. Folklore preserves what formal systems try to erase. Baba Yaga refused to die because people refused to let her die. Across centuries and changing systems, people found her valuable enough to preserve. She survived because she was needed. Finally, we'll examine why we still need Baba Yaga today and how her ancient wisdom remains relevant. Baba Yaga offers something contemporary culture desperately needs: an archetype of power that doesn't apologize, wisdom that comes through hardship, and honest acknowledgement that transformation requires facing fear. Modern Western culture tends to sanitize death, hide aging, and promise that transformation can be painless. Self-help books suggest you can change your life through positive thinking. Advertising promises youth forever. Medicine treats aging as a disease. Death is hidden away in hospitals. This sanitization creates problems. When people inevitably face real hardship, aging, and death, they're unprepared. The culture has given them no framework for understanding these experiences as natural and meaningful. Baba Yaga provides an alternative framework. She doesn't pretend transformation is easy. She doesn't promise you'll stay young. She doesn't hide death. Instead, she says, life is hard. Aging brings wisdom. Death is a necessary transition, and transformation requires genuine struggle. She models power that doesn't seek approval. Contemporary culture, especially for women, often emphasizes being likable, nice, accommodating. Women who display direct power face social penalties. The message is clear. Female power is acceptable only if it's gentle. Baba Yaga rejects this entirely. She doesn't care if you like her. She doesn't soften her demands. She doesn't apologize for her power. She simply is what she is. Powerful, demanding, frightening when necessary. This model is liberating for people tired of constant accommodation. Baba Yaga shows that power can exist without constant concern for others' comfort. She validates the right to set high standards, to judge harshly, to refuse to help those who don't meet requirements. Modern feminist movements have reclaimed her precisely for this reason. She represents female power before patriarchal systems demanded it be gentled. She's the crone who refuses to be invisible, the elder who refuses to be dismissed. She embodies wisdom gained through hardship rather than ease. Modern self-improvement culture suggests that growth should feel good, that if something is difficult, you're doing it wrong. This creates people who avoid challenge, who interpret difficulty as failure. Baba Yaga teaches the opposite. Her tests are deliberately difficult. Her trials push people to their limits. The lesson is clear. Real growth comes through challenge. Genuine wisdom emerges from hardship. Transformation requires facing what you fear. This aligns with psychological research showing that resilience develops through successfully navigating difficult situations. Baba Yaga encoded this truth into folklore thousands of years before modern psychology validated it. Her harshness also teaches discernment. Not every difficult situation is worth enduring. Baba Yaga's challenges have purpose. They test specific qualities necessary for the knowledge being sought. This models how to evaluate hardship. Does this difficulty serve growth, or is it meaningless suffering? She maintains connection to death as natural and transformative. Contemporary Western culture's death denial creates numerous problems. People reach old age unprepared for their own mortality. They can't support dying loved ones because they've never learned to be comfortable with death. Baba Yaga lives comfortably with death. She inhabits the boundary between life and death. Death is her domain, not something to be feared, but something to be understood and respected. Her cannibalism, stripped of literal horror, represents the truth that death feeds life. Your body will eventually become food for other organisms. Your position will be taken by someone younger. This isn't tragic. It's the cycle that allows life to continue. She also teaches that transformation often requires symbolic death. To become something new, the old self must end. Career changes, relationship endings, identity shifts, all involve letting go of what was. Baba Yaga's oven represents the necessity of this death before rebirth. Environmental movements embrace Baba Yaga as representing nature's power and the consequences of disrespecting natural limits. Climate change and ecological crisis are demonstrating that nature, like Baba Yaga, will enforce its boundaries whether humans like it or not. The lesson of approaching the forest with respect has never been more relevant. Psychological interpretations view her as the shadow self, the aspects of personality we reject but must integrate for wholeness. Jungian psychology emphasizes that growth requires facing the shadow. Baba Yaga, externalized as a figure in stories, allows this confrontation in symbolic form. Feminist spirituality movements reclaim her as goddess, restoring her to divine status. They create rituals honoring the crone aspect she represents, validating elder women's power and wisdom. Fantasy literature and gaming use her frequently because she's a perfect narrative device. She creates challenges, provides crucial knowledge, judges character, facilitates transformation. Mental health discussions increasingly recognize that discomfort and challenge are necessary for growth, that overprotection creates fragility, that resilience comes from successfully navigating difficulty. This validates what Baba Yaga has always taught. Aging populations in developed countries need better models for elderhood. Baba Yaga offers one: the elder who maintains power through knowledge and experience, who doesn't apologize for aging, who uses their position to teach and test younger generations. Someone considering a major life change faces Baba Yaga's threshold. Do you have the courage to leave safety? Will you work through the difficult transition? Can you face the symbolic death of your old identity? Someone dealing with a harsh mentor might recognize the Baba Yaga pattern. Are they testing you to help you develop, or controlling you for their benefit? The difference is crucial. Someone facing their own mortality needs frameworks for understanding death. Baba Yaga's comfortable relationship with death, her position at the boundary, her facilitation of transitions. These provide one such framework. Someone tired of accommodating everyone else might find liberation in Baba Yaga's model. permission to set high standards, permission to judge, permission to be frightening rather than comforting. The ecological crisis particularly needs Baba Yaga's lesson. Nature isn't here to serve human comfort. It has rules that will be enforced. Disrespect brings consequences. The forest will reclaim what humans thought they controlled. Baba Yaga offers contemporary culture honest acknowledgement that transformation requires struggle. Power doesn't require approval. Death is natural and transformative. She models elder wisdom, harsh teaching that serves growth, and comfortable relationship with mortality. She provides frameworks for environmental ethics, psychological shadow work, feminist spirituality, and meaningful aging. Understanding why we still need Baba Yaga means recognizing what we've lost in modernization. We've lost comfort with death, respect for harsh wisdom, acceptance of difficulty as necessary for growth. We've lost frameworks for honoring elders, for understanding transformation, for maintaining healthy relationship with nature. Baba Yaga preserves these lost understandings. She carries them forward from ancient times into the present, encoded in her iron teeth and spinning hut and impossible tests. She refuses to let us forget that life includes death, that growth includes pain, that wisdom includes fear. This is why she couldn't be killed by Christianity, couldn't be domesticated by the Soviets, and won't be forgotten in the modern world. She represents truths that remain true regardless of what official systems prefer to believe. As long as people face hardship, aging, death, and the need for transformation, Baba Yaga will remain relevant. As long as wisdom requires courage and power, requires strength of character, her tests will make sense. As long as the forest exists as a space of danger and possibility, she will dwell there, spinning in her chicken leg hut, waiting for those brave or desperate enough to seek her out. She is the goddess who became a monster but remained divine. She is the elder who frightens and teaches in equal measure. She is the voice of the forest, the guardian of thresholds, the facilitator of transformations. She is Baba Yaga, and she refuses to die.